Crime and Punishment. Author, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Crime and Punishment is a novel by Fyodor Dostoevsky, first published in 1866, which explores themes of morality, guilt, redemption, and human suffering. The story revolves around Rodion Raskolnikov, a young and impoverished former student living in St. Petersburg, Russia, who grapples with complex philosophical ideas while descending into despair and moral confusion. The novel's central question is whether an individual can justify criminal acts, especially murder, if they are committed for a greater good. The protagonist, Rodion Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov is an intelligent but troubled young man, torn between his desire for greatness and his growing alienation from society. His desperate poverty has led him to quit his university studies, and he lives in a tiny, dilapidated room, haunted by feelings of inferiority and bitterness toward the world. Despite his intellectual abilities, he struggles with intense internal conflict. He conceives of himself as an extraordinary individual who should not be bound by ordinary moral codes. This belief fuels his radical idea to commit murder, which he rationalizes as a way to both solve his financial problems and test his moral superiority. The crime: murder of the pawnbroker. Raskolnikov's philosophical musings lead him to the notion that certain people, like Napoleon, are above the law, and can commit crimes if it means benefiting society. He views his murder of Alyona Ivanovna, an elderly pawnbroker, as a justified act. He believes that her death will rid society of a corrupt, parasitic individual, and that the money he takes from her can be used for good purposes. His plan, however, quickly unravels. When he kills the pawnbroker, her innocent half-sister, Lizaveta, unexpectedly arrives, and Raskolnikov feels compelled to murder her as well. This double murder is a critical turning point for Raskolnikov. He had hoped that the act would confirm his theory that extraordinary people can transcend moral laws, but instead, it plunges him into a psychological and emotional crisis. He becomes consumed by guilt and paranoia, questioning whether his crime was truly justified and whether he is as extraordinary as he imagined. Psychological consequences: guilt and isolation. After the murders, Raskolnikov's mental state deteriorates rapidly. He grows paranoid, constantly fearing arrest and punishment. His guilt manifests in physical illness and a growing sense of alienation from those around him. He withdraws from society, avoiding friends and family, while becoming increasingly erratic in behavior. He oscillates between moments of calm and clarity and episodes of intense emotional turmoil, as he wrestles with the moral implications of his crime. One of the novel's most significant themes is the psychological torment that Raskolnikov experiences. While he initially tries to justify his actions through cold, rational reasoning, he cannot escape the emotional weight of his crime. His inner struggle reflects the broader tension between the intellectual and emotional aspects of human nature, as well as the limits of rationality when confronted with questions of morality and conscience. Sonia, the moral compass. Throughout the novel, Raskolnikov encounters various characters who represent different moral and philosophical perspectives. One of the most important is Sonia Marmeladov, the daughter of a disgraced public official. Sonia is forced into prostitution to support her destitute family, yet she remains deeply religious and embodies Christian humility, forgiveness, and self-sacrifice. Despite her suffering, she maintains a strong moral compass and believes in the possibility of redemption through faith and love. Sonia plays a crucial role in Raskolnikov's journey. She becomes a confidant and a source of solace for him, and it is through his relationship with her that he begins to confront the full gravity of his crime. While Raskolnikov initially dismisses her religious beliefs as naive, he is gradually drawn to her compassion and strength. Sonia's unwavering faith and kindness challenge Raskolnikov's nihilistic worldview, and she ultimately serves as the catalyst for his moral awakening. The investigation: Porfiry Petrovich. Porfiry Petrovich, the detective in charge of investigating the murders, plays a psychological game with Raskolnikov. Porfiry is a shrewd and perceptive investigator who suspects Raskolnikov early on but refrains from arresting him immediately. Instead, he engages in a battle of wits with Raskolnikov, trying to provoke him into confessing by appealing to his conscience. Porfiry's methodical and patient approach contrasts with Raskolnikov's impulsive and erratic behavior, highlighting the differences between justice and the internal torment of guilt. Porfiry's interactions with Raskolnikov contribute to the latter's growing paranoia and mental disintegration. Rather than relying solely on evidence, Porfiry uses psychological tactics to pressure Raskolnikov, confident that his guilty conscience will eventually lead him to confess. The tension between the two characters builds throughout the novel, culminating in Raskolnikov's ultimate admission of guilt. The theme of redemption. Redemption is a central theme in Crime and Punishment. Raskolnikov's journey from pride and arrogance to humility and repentance mirrors the Christian concept of spiritual salvation. Throughout the novel, he wrestles with the idea of confessing his crime, torn between his desire to avoid punishment and his need to unburden his soul. His pride and intellectual arrogance prevent him from fully accepting responsibility for his actions, but as his psychological torment deepens, he begins to realize that redemption can only come through confession and atonement. In the novel's final chapters, Raskolnikov confesses to the murders and is sentenced to a Siberian penal colony. While his punishment is severe, it marks the beginning of his spiritual rebirth. In Siberia, Raskolnikov remains defiant at first, but over time, he begins to embrace Sonia's teachings of faith and love. The novel ends with the possibility of Raskolnikov's moral and spiritual redemption, suggesting that even the most grievous sins can be forgiven through repentance and love. The novel's philosophical underpinnings. Dostoevsky explores various philosophical themes in Crime and Punishment, particularly the conflict between utilitarianism and Christian morality. Raskolnikov's theory that some individuals have the right to commit crimes for the greater good is a direct challenge to traditional ethical frameworks, and his ultimate downfall serves as a critique of utilitarian logic. Dostoevsky portrays the dangers of nihilism and moral relativism, suggesting that abandoning traditional moral values leads to spiritual and psychological ruin. At its core, the novel grapples with the question of whether human beings can truly live without moral absolutes. Raskolnikov's descent into guilt and madness illustrates the consequences of trying to transcend moral laws, while Sonia's faith and compassion represent the possibility of redemption through humility and love. Conclusion: Crime and Punishment is a profound exploration of the human psyche, morality, and the possibility of redemption. Through Raskolnikov's journey from prideful intellectualism to spiritual awakening, Dostoevsky examines the complexities of guilt, conscience, and the human capacity for forgiveness. The novel's enduring relevance lies in its timeless exploration of these universal themes, as well as its vivid portrayal of the psychological and emotional consequences of crime. The end.